The lecturer, journalist and polemicist Ash Sarkar is a contributing editor at the left-wing website Novara Media. She was a big supporter of the former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn in the run-up to the 2019 election. And Tim Stanley is a historian, author and broadcaster. He's a leader writer at the Daily Telegraph and, along with Ash, is a regular panellist on Radio 4's Moral Maze. His latest book, Whatever Happened to Tradition?
What to do is keep the staff we've got.
Ash, we haven't heard from you yet. I mean, the question is, when will the Prime Minister admit the NHS is in crisis?
Well, look, the reason why you don't want to admit that it's a crisis is because it makes your government look bad, and it's that simple. But if you can't be trusted to describe the problem, why should we trust you to fix the problem? It's wholly deceptive. There's a lot that's been said tonight that I obviously agree with. You need more staff in the NHS, you need to grow capacity, you need that capacity to keep up with the fact that we've got a growing and an ageing population. But there's one thing which I think we really need to talk about, and that is how you keep staff, the staff that you've got. Between 2010 and 2020, the real terms pay of doctors on average fell by around 25%. That is a huge devaluing of doctors' work. Do you think that doctors' work became 25% less useful during that time? No. You just decided to start paying them worse comparative to what they'd been paid before and forcing them to work in worse conditions. And when it came to your party's mates in the city, you said, well, in order to get the best talent, we've got to lift the cap on bankers' bonuses. Right. Pay's got to be competitive. But when it comes to things like the NHS or the education sector, you're effectively saying to all these public sector workers, get poorer and be happy about it. Now, why should any of them accept that?
That's not right.
Unless you're giving them a pay rise which keeps up with inflation, they are getting poorer.
So look, the position is, the way it's worked, and by the way, not just under the Conservative government, but under previous governments, is that these decisions, you try to take the politics out of it, because there is a lot of politics in this, of course, so that the pay review bodies have a look at it. And just to put that in some kind of context, in a previous dispute in the 1980s, it was actually the nursing union at that stage which called for this to be done by the pay review body. And I mean,
if you're going back to the 1980s, it's such a weird argument. We're talking about what's going on in 2023. The fact is that you've got nurses using food banks, doctors moving to Australia where the pay is better, and that's because your pay isn't competitive.
But can I just explain how it works? Only because when I was the prisons minister, I actually made representations to the pay review body. So you have people who are highly expert people, qualified. Sometimes they might have a trade union background, sometimes they might have other area of expertise. The government and the minister will give evidence about what is affordable. They can take expert evidence from elsewhere, and they will then reach a decision. And by the way,
the pay review body is making decisions based on what funding you allocate. I'm sorry, this is such a ridiculous way of you to try and shunt off responsibility.
Can I just quickly inflation, that's eroding people's pay, and obviously its conditions also. The government needs to start tackling inflation first.
Okay, well, so let me just get round the panel and I'll come back to you, Ash.
So, do you know why they're trying to make it harder for people to go on strike? Because it's very simple. This government is scared of what happens when workers organise collectively together. They're scared that after 12 years of stagnant and falling living standards, of not getting pay rises in the good times, now there's a cost of living crisis, you can't get a pay rise now either, that people are realising that the only power they have is collective bargaining, and when being pushed to it, withdrawing their labour. So that's why they're trying to push through this, frankly, pathetic package of measures to try and restrict people's right to exercise that fundamental democratic right. And if people are out there thinking about organising their workplaces, this should give them heart, that the government are on the back foot, and it's pathetic, quite frankly.
Tim, you've been a sacrificial lamb, in a way, for the institution.
Well, I think the people who come out worst from the autobiography are the press, quite frankly, because what the autobiography lifts a lid on is the very grubby dealings between the institution of the palace and the tabloid media, where instead of being able to be a family, which is defined by love and nurturing and caring for one another, the royals have been turned into this kind of hideous cartel where they're feeding each other to the wolves in order to advance their own interests. And I recognise this as a minority opinion in this country, but I do think that that is a quality inherent to monarchy. You know, I think that princes and dukes are good names for musicians and dogs. I don't think that they're, great titles for human beings. And when you look at the misery that these people have inflicted on one another, I think of them as, like zoo animals who've been, bred in captivity, and they lead these existences where they're clearly really unhappy, but we go, oh, isn't it so good for tourism?
Ash, you never...
Hang on a minute.
Ash,
okay.
In all seriousness, He never actually gives any examples of that whatsoever.
He does give examples. He gives the example of private conversations between, oh God, I can't believe I know this. I feel like I know too much about these people and it's driving me insane. But he gives examples of private conversations with Camilla and his brother, which made it to the press.
No, but he doesn't, you see.
He gives other examples of negative briefing against, him and Meghan. Now, I'm not taking sides because I'm a Republican. I've got integrity. I can't stand any of them. But I do think it lifts the lid on press practices. And one of the things you can tell about where power is truly wielded in this country is the fact that we were supposed to have Leveson Part 2, looking at press practices, how they collaborate with the police. And that got kicked into the long grass because no politician wants to get on the wrong side of Rupert Murdoch.
Let's hear a bit from our audience. Yes, the guys, you're waving your
He should give up his titles, and that's the thing which leaves me very cold, is that I think that Meghan and Harry have been treated abominably by the institution. I think they've been treated abominably by the press. But please spare me the words from a duke and a duchess about equality when their complaint is that they've not been treated well by an inherently unequal institution.
Not to the religion at all. He's got no plan.
I'm so sorry, but I have got to let Ash.
I mean, like, talking about counting of those 5 pledges, I think 2 or 3 of them were going to happen anyway, so that is cheating.
Yes, that's true.
When it comes to maths lessons, when it comes to maths lessons, I actually don't think it's a bad idea. And first and foremost, I think that those maths lessons should be given to you.
Are you agreeing with the government now?
I don't think it's a bad idea. I think maybe I'd have, retained a bit of long division had I done it to 18 rather than dropping it at 16. But I think that first in line for those maths lessons should be the MPs of your own party who crashed the economy into the wall in order to give tax cuts to the rich.
Let's give a